What's happening, everyone? This is Jim from JCRC. I'm back again, working on the TF2, getting ready to put the receiver back in, or the new receiver back in, as well as another winch controller. I bought a wired winch controller, right here. I changed the lead on the end, took off the standard little two-prong white plug that would normally go to your winch, and I soldered in a Futaba plug. I'm going to use this for a light controller on my truck, just to turn the lights on and off. I do have a winch controller in the truck currently for my winch. It's a wireless winch controller via the push button. And like I said, this one's going to get plastic dipped, and I'm just going to hook it directly up to my lights. The wireless winch controller, I'm running off of a Y going from my shift servo to the wireless winch controller. So that can just draw power off my shift servo, since I hardly ever shift my truck. It's not really going to change anything on that aspect. And then this one here, I'm going to wire into the 4th channel on my radio or on my receiver so I can power my lights. And I'm sorry for my camera focusing in and out here. So this is our wired winch controller that is about to be plastic dipped. I'm going to dip this thing right down in it, all the way up to the top of here, going all the way around this plastic connector around the base of it, just to make sure that it has a good seal on all these wires. Here's the receiver, fresh out of plastic dip, or fresh from being plastic dipped. See, the antenna has a good coating on it. Receiver has a generous coating on it. When I put all this on there, I made sure to squish all this plastic dip in and around all these wires. I did put it on with a knife at first. My first couple coats were just around the base here, just to make sure that there was ample plastic dip going in between all of these wires, so there's no chance of water getting down in between them. Afterwards, I squished the wires together a little bit, dunked the whole unit in plastic dip all the way up to here. Let it start to firm up a little bit, and then I bent everything in like this. As you can see, it has a little bit of a curve on it here. Bent it in like that, and then squished the plastic dip all the way back up in between these wires until it started squishing out between these wires, and then just kind of let it dry like that. I have all my wires labeled, so I know which ones are going to which. And that is it for this one for the moment. This is ready to be installed. And this one here, like I said, I'm about to go take this back and dip it right now. And I also have this for the twin hammers from Hot Racing, aluminum gearbox cover. Don't need it for anything other than the fact that my battery on my twin hammers is sitting pretty far forward, and it's right up on the gearbox. And every once in a while, if the battery slides too far forward, it starts pushing on the spur gear. The plastic on the spur gear cover is so soft or whatever that it just kind of pushes in and starts rubbing on the spur gear. So I bought this aluminum one to eliminate that, so the battery can bump right up against this cover, and it won't, the cover won't push in on the spur gear. So that was pretty much the reason that I bought the aluminum cover for the twin hammers, was just so I can get my battery a little bit farther forward without having to worry about it actually pushing on the cover and making contact with the spur gear. Once again, this is Hot Racing. Part number VTH3201. VTH3201. And all of these parts were ordered from A-Main Hobbies. Well, except for this part. This part came from Tower Hobbies. But the winch controller, the receiver, and the new servo that is currently sitting in my truck all came from A-Main. And just to make it clear, I'm not being sponsored by anybody. I just purchased everything from A Main Hobbies because they had everything that I needed in a one-stop shop. Um, other than this little guy, I ordered this cover after the fact from Tower Hobbies, um, just because they were probably one of the only ones that actually had it. So, but everything else, like I said, everything else was ordered from A Main, just because they had everything. So it was like a one-stop shop. And the prices were, relatively cost friendly, I guess would be the right word. So once again, not being sponsored by anybody, just letting you know where I got all my stuff from for this particular round. So give me a couple minutes here, guys. I'm going to get ready to install this receiver in the truck, and I'm going to go plastic dip this winch control unit and let it start drying. And just to make things totally clear with the winch controller, this is the wire that I cut off, the female white connector that would normally go to your winch, that would supply the power to your winch. This is the one that I cut off of the winch controller. And I soldered in a female Futaba 3-prong connector. Now I don't need a 3-prong connector, all I need is the positive and the negative. But I did need the Futaba style plug, so my lights can plug into this connector. And then once again, I'll be able to control my turning on and off of my lights via my controller using that winch controller. So my lights will be able to plug into this, which will be the main power going in and out of the lights from the winch controller. And just so you guys can see it in action, because I do have the same winch controller, same style winch controller hooked up to the twin hammers going to the lights on this one as well. That is toggled right here on the switch, so I can toggle it on and toggle it off. Like I said, I'm going to do the exact same thing to the trail finder, just so I can toggle my lights on and off like that. The trail finder currently is using a micro switch on the inside of the passenger side rear fender of the truck, where I can just reach my hand in and click on the micro switch, but having it on a switch like this would be so much more convenient and cooler. So that is why I am hooking up a winch controller to my light switch. And just for craps and giggles, since the twin hammers is sitting here, I figured I'd show you guys that I also added a couple of 5-gallon gas cans on this guy the other day. And for some reason, man, my autofocus is really playing with me here. One 5-gallon can, and there is another 5-gallon can sitting on the other side there. Just another little quick add-on, trying to put something in here to somewhat block these electrical wires or battery wires. Alright, we'll bring this rig a little bit closer here. Try to make sure we got it all lined up yonder on the camera. And you gotta love these body mounts, eh? Look how sturdy that is. It's so easy to remove. Alright, got a mess of wires here I need to pull off to the side and start figuring out where I need to remount this here mess of receiver stuff. So while I try to figure this out, I'm probably going to put you guys on pause for one more minute here. Yeah, there's step one is complete. I was able to get my receiver cover back over top of the receiver. I did have to hog out a gigantic hole in the opening here of this receiver cover to let all these wires stick through, which is also why I had to bend this. I had to bend all these wires coming out this way, just so when it does go into place down here, that my body is still going to have enough room to clear. So let me get this guy placed inside the proper location and we'll move on to the next step. And we are back. That little guy is installed back in its proper location. You can see why I bent those wires up here, just so I can make sure that my body is going to be able to sit down on top of here without a problem. And now it'll start hooking everything back up, which is quite the mess of wires here, so I'm going to have to get on that and try to sort out where all this good stuff goes. And I'm trying to do a little sorting here. This one is my 4th channel. That is the one that's going to go to the winch controller for the lights. This one right here is, what is this one here? That is going to my speed controller. This guy right here, I believe, is my bind plug. Yep, this is my bind connector. I put an extra male connector into the end of this female just to keep any kind of debris out of this area, just in case I need to rebind it for some crazy reason. We already covered that is the speed controller. Got a dual whip here, a 2-in-1. This is for my steering servo and this power capacitor. And one more over here that is another 2-in-1. Alright, this one is going to my auxiliary one, which is my shift servo, and also going to my winch, which is just supplying power to the winch, since my winch is being controlled on a push button. All it needs is power to work it, so that's going to be hooked up to my shift servo. Alright, so let me start figuring this stuff out here, and I'll probably put you guys on pause again so you don't have to go through all the tedious nonsense of watching that crap. Alright, so I got a couple wires plugged in so far. I just figured I would point this out real fast here. Wires like this, especially if I plan on going in the water, where I only have 2 prongs coming in, the male or the positive and the negative, and then there's a third port over here on the other side that's empty. I make sure to squirt some dielectric grease right into that third empty port and just try to force as much grease into that empty socket as possible from both ends, just to guarantee or try to help in making sure, or help to make sure that no water makes it down inside here. I also squirt a little bit of dielectric grease into each one of these ports as well. And then where the actual wires plug in, I put a healthy dosing of dielectric grease right across the top of these connectors. That way when I slide the male connector inside here, it's just going to slime this whole inner sleeve, just to kind of guarantee that no water makes it down inside that as well. Oh, and we are back. I got everything all kind of wired up for the moment. It is a mess of spaghetti under here. As far as where everything is going and running. My antenna wire going into this plastic tube here, I put a little bit of shrink wrap around it as it was going into the tube and heated it up, just to make sure that my antenna doesn't pull out of the tube. Sorry about the mess of wires, but some are longer and some are shorter, and there's just not much room to really put anything under here. I did have it all pretty much streamlined in the beginning, but now it's looking a little bit more spaghetti-ish. So got everything hooked up so far except for my lights. My lights will be plugged into right here. This will be the 4th channel. My bind plug sitting off to the side, kind of sitting underneath this piece of Velcro, just holding it in place. I do have my winch running off of my shift servo, so my shift servo and my winch are running off of a Y connector, and that appears to be working still. I can still spool in and out my winch, so it's getting power without a problem. Still able to shift gears, so that's not a problem. I've got my new Savox steering servo hooked up right here. I just adjusted the exponential and the travel and all that other good stuff on it, and had to reverse the servo. Probably not going to be able to get any kind of a real good angle on this, but she's definitely hooked up. I slowed the exponential down to just 100%. When I had it at negative 100, it was just way too quick and way too touchy. I mean, you could just barely touch the wheel, and it was cranking all the way left and all the way right. So, not too bad. It's good enough right now at 100%. She's a little noisy. But that's where we're sitting at right now. The last thing I'm waiting on is for my other winch controller to dry from being plastic dipped so I can hook it up into the lights. And once that's all done, then this baby will be all back together. So probably another 24 hours for that plastic dip to dry on my winch controller, or my light controller I should say, and we'll be all set. So that's it for right now, guys. Old receiver, new receiver, plastic dipped, good to go. And that concludes our show for today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Click like and subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you on the next video.